Answer if anyone would like to ask Carol any questions about her topic, or maybe Tom, you might have some interesting memories of Carol that you could ask her about.
Well, nothing good. Sorry, Carol. Carol, you were the original director of the Seamless Garment Network.
Yes.
And that's when I first got to know you. I don't think you're too active at leadership in that group now. It's now called Consistent Life. But maybe you'd like to just comment briefly about the consistent ethic, and also where you think that ethical position stands today in society, whether we're making any grounds with that.
Yes, Consistent Life. Seamless Garment is now Consistent Life. It's a network of about 200 organizations, a little bit more, that embrace the opposition to war, abortion, capital punishment, economic injustice, and euthanasia. I'm on the board of directors still. It's an incredible group of people. There are signatories, and you say, well, what in the world does that do? What I really think it does from a perspective, from a pro-life perspective, is that it allows people to be pro-life. You know, you can still be a Democrat, you can still be a liberal, and gosh, if I sign this statement, I can be pro-life. Signers of our statement include people like Martin Sheen, for instance. And because he's a signer of our statement, he made a public witness of withdrawing his name from the abortion rights parade in Washington, D.C., took his name off of the program with a lot of fanfare. Wait a minute, I can't do this. I'm against war, of course. I'm against capital punishment. But I'm not going to go there with abortion. So we give people permission to be pro-life who may not otherwise find it easy to do that.
A little anecdote about Carol. This had to be 20 years ago. I had called a fellow in Michigan who was involved in a group called Just Life, and they were part of the Seamless Garment Network. And he said, "Well, you want to talk to a lady called Carol Crossett." And I said, "Well, how do I get in touch with her?" He says, "Well, if you look at today's New York Times, she's on the cover picture on the front page, being carted off, having been arrested in Buffalo at whatever that was called at that time, the Spring of Life or something."
Yes, that's right.
She's a troublemaker.
I knew my picture was on the front page because my son, he lived in New York at the time, and he was in a laundromat. He was, went in early in the morning to get his laundry done before he went to work, and he's walking on the floor and he sees this New York Times. He says, "Oh my gosh, that's my mother." Yes, I've been arrested numerous times. I've been arrested about 12 times for pro-life and about 8 times for other issues, anti-war, homelessness. I see it all connected. Life is life, and we can't cherry pick. This is a very important issue, though. I think this is the cornerstone issue. Yes.
Given your divided loyalty, what do you think, going forward to 2012, do you think the possibility is they'll get a couple more justices in that might overturn Roe v. Wade?
I would have to leave that to someone new I don't know. I think that this issue is clearly wearing on them. This wears on them. I don't know if you read the book, what is it called, The Nine? It's about the Supreme Court justices. It was published maybe 2 years ago. It was written by a pro-choice reporter for the New York Times. And basically, if you read this book, you know that abortion is something they wake up to every morning and think, what am I going to do about this? This weighs on them. And I don't see how this can continue. I think it's going to break at some point.
Carol, just in terms of, Judy was speaking about Dr. Jefferson, and you said she was certainly pivotal in your changing your views. Is there some way to put it in a nutshell, perhaps, the message that she gave you maybe that first time you heard her speak?
I just thought what she told me was how many abortions there were every year. And I thought, oh my gosh, I guess I thought that's how many abortions there were from time immemorial. I just was uneducated. But I think her very presence, her intellectualism, here's an African-American woman who was beautiful. I remember seeing how beautiful she was. She had this incredible smile. And I thought, gosh, this is not the kind of pro-life person I thought. This is not what I thought pro-life people were like. So I think it was who she was that brought me around a lot. We, by the way, have had a lot of protesters at our museum. Not a lot, there's a handful. They actually had a website called the Susan B. Anthony Museum, where the Susan B. Anthony birthplace. But that's died down a lot because some of the voices of feminism that they had featured on their website probably asked them to withdraw their names. Because pro-choice feminists cannot argue with this, and they know that. So I think it is coming back around. It's becoming very acceptable. And so I just invite all of you to visit the museum, and we'd love your feedback if you do. Yes.
Let me make a
Yes.
comment.
Yes.
I know Judy knows this and Susan does, and I don't know if Carol and other people in this room recognize what's going on. There's legislation that has been proposed by certain of our colleagues on the county board. And yet it's kind of interesting when you said the word protesters, it sort of kicked something in my head. We know that there's certain abortion centers, facilities in this area, and the legislators that have authored this legislation are trying to avoid, even though I think it's against the First Amendment and they're a right to assemble, is trying to curtail the ability of people to gather at abortion centers to put up an opposition. And I would urge, if maybe you want to address the crowd, whether today or at a different time, that people come to the board meetings and advocate your positions, because I can tell you the other side of the coin, the other people are mobilizing, they're here all the time. And Sheila will tell you, it's unless you see a groundswell of people, this legislation is going to pass. If a lot of people come out in opposition, it might die in committee. So I don't know, Judy, if you want to talk about that in more depth at now or a later point in time, but I really think that's a critical issue that they're probably prolonging right now because of Election Day. They don't want to get involved in this whole abortion issue, but I certainly believe that after November, when we'll be dealing with the budget, but come January of next year, this is going to be a big issue, and I don't know whether I'll be reelected. Sheila doesn't know what's going to happen, but advocates for
Well, I think it's very interesting. I was speaking with the mayor about this just before the ceremony, but one of the interesting aspects of what you're just saying is we were told we should lay low. That, you know, it looks like it was going to be going in our favor, that it wasn't going to come up out of committee, and that we shouldn't really be talking about it too much. So what you're saying is virtually just the opposite of that advice, which is good to hear.
the other end is told to keep it in check because of the elections, and they didn't want to have these issues bubbling up. So they've been told to keep it in check. Perhaps we've been told the same thing because nobody wants to have this debate at this point in time, but I certainly know that the other side has been told to keep going.
Well, I think it's a good point. I think we will be notifying